All right, welcome back to the channel. This is going to be a another video that I'm adding to my series on React Hook Form. Our React Hook Form, it says here, is performant, flexible, and extensible forms with easy use and validation. If you take a look at my website, at my YouTube channel, you see I already have 3 videos that I've done on React Hook Form. This 4th will be added to this playlist. And the purpose of this video really is to show you how to create, what's the term they're using, a wizard or a step-by-step form to capture information, do validation, and keep state information on the fields that you're entering. So just a quick demo of the application. You can enter a name, Aaron Saunders. Next, you can go previous. Where React Hook Form comes in is it's keeping track of the values that I'm entering in a form field for me. So it's basically managing the state for me across all of the different slides. That's the other part. This is using Ionic Slides. So that's how I'm getting the nice animation and kind of movement and everything, which is very cool. You can see here as I hit next, I'm getting the validation from React Hook Form. I can move to the next field. I'm going to show a different way to validate your fields here because I need to confirm that these 2 passwords exist. So if I try to go forward, it says, well, a password is required. And so I enter a password. And then I still try to go forward. It's saying, well, these 2 passwords don't match because this one needs to match that one. Then I can go next, and clearly this is the last field. I can't submit because this field's required. You can see I can still go back, and it's keeping track of all my state. And then here on the last one, I could submit, all the fields are valid, and I'm getting all the field values saved here. So this is what we're going to show you in this demo. This video will be added to the end of this playlist on React Hook Form. So please make sure you like and subscribe, not only to this video, but to the channel overall. I push a lot of great content out on Ionic Framework. Also check out my courses that are listed on Udemy. Right now, those courses are focused mostly on Vue.js, but I'm going to start pushing out some React.js content in the upcoming month. And so now let's get into the code. The first thing we are going to do in the app is let's get our slides going, and we're going to use IonSlides. Let's go down here, and we're just going to pull this whole React example out of here. So first, let's get the components we need. Let's take the options, set the options, and then let's just take the slides. We'll drop them in the middle of our page. Let's switch over to our page. The content's already there. Also, by the way, this sample React project is based off the blank template. I just cleaned everything out of the middle of the home page from the blank template. So as you can see, we are all set. We have our slides. We're able to slide between them because it's loading our options. So if I switch this to slide 0, you can see now it started up at the first slide, which is what we wanted. Let's reload this. Let's put a little bit of a body around this slide first. I have created some styles here. And so I'm going to apply some of these styles in advance so you can start to see the frame for the slide. So let's start to create these slides. So let's come in here and let's div. Put our slide inside of the div. And then let's apply some of these styles that we created to each one of the slides so it can start to look with the way we need it to look. And so now we kind of have the layout of what our slides are going to look like. And let's, for now, I think if we get enough time, what we're going to do is we're going to pull each one of these slides out into separate components. But for now, let's just leave them in here until we get the bulk of the work done. So slide 2, slide 3. 3 save, refresh, slide 1, slide 2, slide 3. So we got them sliding. So the one thing is that in our demo, we don't want the user to be able to slide through the steps of the wizard. We want them to actually click the button to move through the wizard. So we need to turn off the ability from the user to swipe. And so to turn off the ability for the user to swipe, you have to get access to the underlying swiper component underneath there. And there is a method on here. You can get swiper, but we don't need to get swiper. We're just going to use a reference, and from a reference, it will give us access to the slides And so I think I already, let's see, now let's add that on here now. So what we're going to do is we need access to the ref. And we'll call this my slides. All right, now let's define this ref. My slides equals ref, actually use ref. And we're going to set that to null. Let's set a type of any because I'm going to get some errors, I know, if I don't do that. I'm going to import using the existence. We have ref. That should give me access to my slides. What we want to do is at startup, we want to lock the ability to do this. So after I get my slides ref and on startup, we are going to say my slides dot current dot, and then this method, if you look down here, lock swipes. We want to lock swipes. My slide current lock swipes, IPES. We're going to set it to true, and we should be good to go. So let's go back here and see what we got. See, I can no longer swipe, and that's exactly the behavior that we want. We don't want the user to be able to swipe. You would have to click the buttons to move left and right. So now that we're talking about that, let's talk about clicking the buttons to move left and right. And so let's add some buttons to the bottom of our slide here. And so to add the buttons, first let's add our Ion button. And now let's come down in here. And I know that we want to break each one of our slides up. Actually, probably should have done this in the beginning, into a div. We want a div for the body of the slide, actually for slide content, and then because the way we're going to manage the buttons, we need a div on the bottom for the buttons. And I believe the class I created for this is, and class name, and then up top here we want to say, I probably should have done this before I copy and pasted this. So form content, and then here we need our Ion button, and then for the first one we only need a next, right? So we want to go next here, save, format, and then let's go down here for this next set. So for the second slide, we want to go inside the slide. We set a footer. We want to go, you need to go previous and next. So let's put our previous. And next. All right, that's fine. And then for our final slide, they want to go previous and then they want to submit. And this button will be type submit because we're at the end here. And all these buttons will call functions. So this is going to be on click. And then we have the function. And then we're going to previous. Let's just call it prev. Then we know we want a previous up here. And let's add our function previous. Const prev. I know I need to make an asynchronous call, so let's put async as my NC. And I know we're going to need a next, so let's put that in here too. Copy. Next to previous. Okay. And so next, let's add the next on here. Where's the next? Let's clean this up. Okay. Slide 1, slide 2, slide 3, previous next. Let's add a next down here. What's wrong? Next. Oh, I need to close this out. Let's close. All right, everything. Type submit. Next. Okay, let's save. Okay, now let's actually do something. So what you can do is the same way we have access to the slides reference here, we can use it to go forward and next based on the click. So what we're going to do is just make the call. And the call that you want to make is slide next and slide prev. UV. These are asynchronous. Oh, it wants to be inside of an actual function, so let's put it inside of an actual function. Save. Let's see if it works. Because remember I locked it because I don't want you to be able to move it. So every time before you take the action, I need to unlock it and lock it again. So let's just do this. Say swipe false, and then swipe true. So what I'm doing is when you click the button, I'm unlocking it, changing, and then locking again. Also, these are asynchronous calls too, so we need to put in a wait in front of all of them. Okay, let's see what we get. All right, so so you can see I'm able to move forward and I'm able to move back, but I can't swipe, which is the important part that we want to implement. Now let's see what's going on in this slide. Why is that? Why are these guys not down at the bottom? Oh, because I didn't separate it with a form content div. So let's wrap that, form content, put a div around that. And then the next one, form content, put a div around that. Next, previous. All right, so we can see it's moving and the swiping's not working. I guess I'll see if there's a way to kind of remove those dots down there at the bottom. Or maybe make my buttons a little bit smaller. But so we got the first part done. We're able to navigate back and forth through the slides, and get the behavior that we want, which is turning this locking off. We've been able to access the functions that are related to Swiper. Why do we call it Swiper? To the slides, and now we're set up to actually start to put some fields inside of these each one of the slides for the step that we're on in the wizard. And that's what we're going to start to cover in the next section. Data, or some actual forms inside of the slides. Okay, and let's start with the first one. And what we want to do here is we want to capture first name and last name. To try to save us some time on typing a bunch of stuff, let's first of all just kind of bulk load let's bulk load in the imports that we need. We know we're going to need an item and an input. Let's add those guys. Pretty much all of our inputs are going to look the same. Let's go here, and we're going to say basic info. So on the first slide, we're going to capture the basic information, and the basic information we want ion item, ion input, and we're going to do this twice. So we want the first name and we want the last name. So placeholder, first name, copy this input, placeholder, last name. So to address these lines, we don't want the lines there, so let's take our lines out. So we get rid of our lines, and then we need a little bit of space between them. So let's add just a little bit of space between each one of the second items. We're going to add a little bit of margin. So let's come down to this second one here, and let's add some margin. And so you get some space between the first and the last name there. So as you know, this is just a basic input, but we just have the basic information, the first name, last name. And then on the next screen, let's copy the same content because we're going to do a little something different. The next screen is going to be the password information. So let's go down here. And password. But here, this is going to be password. And then down here, we want to confirm password. Okay, and let's see what we got. We got password and confirm password. And then the last one, we're just going to keep it simple. And we're just going to take one of these. And let's just go down here and email. I'll say contact. And let's stay consistent. Let's put 2 on every page. So let's copy this. But I need to get the second one that has the margins. So let's get this next one. And we're going to say, so this is email. And this will be phone number. And let's change this to email address. And let's start putting some types on here. So I think we can say type email, go up here. So we make sure that this isn't visible and say type password and copy that to the next one. Type password. Okay, all right, so we got our name, our passwords. As you can see, it's blocking what we're typing. And then let's go to our next one. We have email, and then we have phone number for contact information. So you can see now we have our form set. Now let's start to use the magic of React Form. So that's what we're about to do now. React Form is pretty straightforward. How it's kind of evolved from when I first started to use it. Had to do a bunch of different things to get Ionic components to work with it. But right now, for the basic things we're trying to do specifically with the Ion input, all you really need to do is just treat it just like you would any other normal one, any other normal HTML input form. So first, let me get my types here for text just to be thorough. So we set that type to text, and let's say I don't want that. I want the input. All right, first of all, for all these to work, we got to put a name on them. So let's put a name, and let's just say name equals first, and down here, name equals last. Name equals password 1, and copy. Input password 2. That's what we want. And then finally, name equals email. And come down here, and name is phone. Okay, so let's get this out of here. Let's say no thanks. All right. So we have the names because our React form needs the names. So the next step is I have already installed React form, and that's just there's instructions on installing React form. Get started. It's really this npm install React form. That's how you get it. I've already done that in a project, save us some time, so I can just start to import the things that I need from React form. And they also have this other plugin called ErrorMessage. I'm going to just bring that in now. And since I'm importing everything, I like to keep my imports together. So here's all the imports. We'll comment this out because we're not going to use it quite yet. And let's comment out this. Let's take out the use. Let's just use provider in this because we're gonna introduce those a little bit later. Right now, we just want to do the use form. Okay, and if you look at React form, you can see the basic way it works is you just use this ref to register, and then I'm going to submit. You get access to the data, and you're good to go. So we're going to use this kind of very simple approach right here to get us started, and then we'll kind of evolve into something a little bit more complex. So first, let's get our handle submit. So let's wrap this whole thing into a form. So let's go up to the top of the slides. Let's wrap all of our slides into a form, all the way down to the bottom. Slides, form. Okay, everything to the form. The next thing is our handle submit. So let's go up here, const. As you can see, it's pretty straightforward. We get passed in some data, define as any, and for now, we're just going to console log the data. React form will keep us from submitting until the form is validated. So that's the trick. This isn't handle submit. This is on submit. Let me copy that. Handle submit is called by React form, which is this line. So let's just bring this in here. Just use form. Bring it right up here on top. Right now we're not going to use watch. We're going to use errors just to console log us so that we can see the errors as they're happening. So let's just put this underneath here. errors, and then we need to register, because as you can see, you use this ref register for each one of the form elements. So let's just go and start adding them. Ref register, ref register. Actually, we want them all to be required. So let's set that on there when we register it. You can just specify as you add it. So that makes it the field required, and we want them all to be required. So that's a required field. That's a required field. Required. Required. Placeholder email. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Okay. And now let's go up and make the rest of these required. They're supposed to be required. Required. Okay. Here they're using this errors with the name of the field to get the errors that's associated with it. We're going to take this approach for now, and we'll migrate it later to the more advanced using this error message. Let's just keep it simple right now, and we'll put error messages in later. So let's just go underneath all these fields, and underneath the item is where we need to put the error message. This is kind of getting a little crowded. So under item, 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 item. Okay, so we should start to see some errors now since all these fields, if everything compiles. So now the catch is to trigger the, see, because when I click next, it's letting me move along to all these fields. But notice it's not letting me submit because there's errors, but we're not getting any of the error messages displayed. Which let's open up our console and see if we're getting errors dumped. See, this is our errors getting dumped out. And what we want to do is why is it this? Oh, because I didn't use the correct name. See, this is errors, which is the errors object, and you need to provide it the name of the element. And so right here, it's phone. This is password. Actually, it's password 2. So I'm going to have to put this in quotes like this. Well, let's do password 2. Oh, let's get rid of that. Get rid of that. Let's copy this to make our lives easier. Go up here. Password 1. What do we got here? This is last, and this is first. Okay, let's move this back down to the bottom. Next, I left everything blank. Next, next. And then on submit, now you can see it's actually showing us the errors. See? The catch is we don't want the user to be able to go to the next slide or next form or the next step if there's errors. Okay, so we're getting the error messages where we're supposed to get the error messages. If I delete this email address, hit submit, you're getting the field required. All right, so now the next step is to make sure we can't switch pages if there's an error. And the way you do that is if you look at the React form and we go back to the top and we trigger, you just specify the name. You specify the name and it will basically trigger a validation on it and return true or false. So what we're going to do is for each page or for each page in the wizard, I know the fields that are on that page that I need to validate. And so what will happen is I won't allow the application to move forward if an error exists. So let's start at the top. And if we go to the first page here, you can see that to go to the next page, I need to click next. And so what we're going to do is trigger takes even one field or an array of or one string or an array of string. What we're going to do is we're going to pass inside a trigger an array of the strings of the names of the fields that need to be valid in order for us to move on. And so here it's first and last. So if I say first, last, and now let's go to next. And we're going to, where's next? Is this next? We're going to say next takes fields. And we're going to say fields is any. And then what we're going to do is we're going to call this trigger. And trigger is going to check those fields. And if there's a problem, it's just going to return. Trigger, let's import trigger. Trigger comes, where is my, it goes right here. So we'll get trigger, and then what we'll do is we'll take the field and we'll pass the fields in here. So it's going to trigger a validation on all these fields. If there's any error at all, we just exit. We don't want to allow the user to go to the next form. Let's fill out all of the fields. So this one's got first and last. This one's going to have password 1 and password 2. So let's copy next. We're going to say password 1, password 2. And then this last one, we don't need to do anything because what will happen is on the submit, it will force a validation of all the fields. So it'll include the email and it'll include the phone number. So we'll get the behavior we want on that page without doing anything special. Okay, so now when I try to go next, it's giving me my fields are required and it won't let me go to the next field. So let's put something in here. So that one's good. The next one, now it'll let me go. I can still go back. I can't go to the next field because this field's required. Next. And then if I try to submit, I get an error here. And then if I put something, then I can submit. And as you can see in the console, I'm getting all the data that I want. All right. So you can see how we're controlling the field. Now let's kind of do a little bit more cleanup here. First, let's get this data on our page here so that we don't have to keep looking in the console. And I'm going to use my standard trick of just doing a JSON stringify the content. So this is my standard. I'm just going to copy and paste this all over here. So we're going to have it create a field called form data that we'll set. So let's get that. So if we go up to top, okay. Let's get our use state in here. And then what we'll do is when we get good data inside of our onSubmit, where's our onSubmit? We're going to set form data with data. So now we get a copy of our data. And then what we'll do down here is this will take the data, it'll stringify it and render it on the page. So let's just kind of run through this quickly. Some dummy data next. Next. Submit, and then you can see we get our form. So that's good. So now the next thing that we want to do is we have some, well, first of all, you can see this is getting to be a little crazy because all these slides are all kind of dumped in the home page. We want to be able to break them out into individual components in a way that's much more manageable. So what we want to do is create a separate component for the contents of each one of the slides. And so we're going to do, let's just start with, and then the interesting part is after we break them up, we still need React Hook Form to manage the state, i.e. all of the fields across all the components, still do the validation and everything else. So that's what we're going to do in the next phase. We're going to use the ability to access the form context and get access to all the form information in separate components. And that's the next step that we're going to cover in the next video. So in this section, we are going to address the fact that this is kind of getting unwieldy. We got a lot of stuff going on inside of home. In this example, I only have 3 steps. If you have a multi-step wizard, you don't want to just keep dropping all these slides into one page. So what we're going to do is we're going to break out the contents of the slide, each slide into a separate component. So let's start with this, and then we're going to use the React Hook Form, useFormContext and FormProvider to kind of manage all of the form fields as if it is really just inside of one component. The first step is let's try to break this component out. And so we will create a new component. And we're going to call this basic info. And at a minimum, we need to return all the stuff from basic info. So let's just do this step by step and make sure that's working. So let's go into my basic info slide. We'll take everything, cut it out of there. Let's go down to our component, drop it in. We've seen it's got a couple of things that it needs. It needs our functions, it needs register, and it needs error. So first let's format this. Let's pass in our function next. So we'll pass in our function as a parameter. And then let's do this. I'm not really getting into types right now. I'm just kind of trying to keep it straightforward. And then, now let's go up here, and where do we just take this guy out? So we took it out from here. So basic info, is that what I call it? Let's see. Basic info. And then it's looking for next. We'll pass it in our function next. And right now, I think that's the only, what else is it complaining about? So now it needs registered an error. And so this is where we're going to use the form context from Reactor Form. And so the way that you do that is, let's go back up to the top here. We need to wrap this whole form. And the way you wrap the whole form is you wrap it with the form provider. So let's drop that in. So I'm going to wrap the whole form with the form provider. Let's go down to the end of my form. You can see how unwieldy this is getting, all the scrolling around. And so we really want to kind of create, some components. So we wrap this form provider. We wrap our form with the form provider. Let's import the form provider from Reactor Form. And then now see how it's decomposing all the methods. And so what we were doing is we were picking them off one by one here, but that's not what you want to do anymore. So we need to, let's go like this. We're going to say use form methods. So we can get the methods here, and then down here, we're just going to go like this. So as we start to refactor out all of these fields, then all it should be left is just the use of methods. And so it's just the approach we're going to take to keep it simple for now. Okay, so now we have our form provider, and since we're wrapping this whole form with the form provider, that means that I can actually get the form context in other components. So I can go into this component here, and I can access the form context. And so, as the comment says here, useFormContext gives me access to all the form hook methods. So now it's imported, and right now we're not using get values. All we need are errors. And so now, inside of my basic form, I have access to register, and I have access to errors. And so everything should just work fine. So let's go through, put this in. Well, first let's verify the error checkings work. So if I empty this out and I try to go next, it's saying this field is required. So we know the error check is working. And then the next thing is to make sure all our data is still coming across. And so you can see everything is still working fine, even though I moved this basic component out. Now the next exercise is we're going to take every single one of these guys, every single one of the slide contents, and we're going to move them out to a separate component. We're just going to follow this exact same pattern. So we know we have contact info and we have password information. So let's just copy this and say return. And then we'll say contact info. And then let's copy this and say password info. Password info. So we know password info as previous and next. So let's say next, and let's say peer EV. So we know that they need to go both. Contact info doesn't, it just has to go. Contact info just needs previous, because contact info is the last piece of information. It can't go next, it can only go previous. So now let's start to copy these in. So this last one here is, this is contact info. So let's cut out contact info, drop it inside of contact info here. And then let's go to this last one, which should be password info. Cut that out. And then drop that into, where to go? Contact, password info. Okay. Now the other thing is, see, so everything's all happy again, everything's working. The other thing is there's still a lot of stuff here at home. So now we're going to use some of Visual Studio Code's refactoring. So I can select this whole component, and it should allow me to refactor, move to new file. And so I'm going to move all these guys to their own, all these components. Let's refactor, move to new file, and then this last one, refactor, move to new file. Okay, so now all these are in their own files. They have their own imports that they need. they're saved, they're being exported. The only thing is that we need to go back to our home page now and use them all. So we have our basic info here. I believe password info was that one. And let's import all of them. Where are they? So basic info, password info, and contact info. And then also, I don't like the way this is, since it's all that's in there. So let's change all of these to export default. Delete this, like this. Save, and now let's go into each one of them. So basic info, and it's like, see, like how you have on the bottom here of this one, export default home. We're just going to go to contact info, export default, contact info, password, export default, password info, basic, export default, basic info. Okay, now everybody's, we have our first name, password. Oh, what's going on? Next is not a function. Let's see. Let's go back and make sure that I passed everything in. Oh, let's go back to my home. I didn't, so let's get these password info. Next. This is prev. And then the last one is contact info, and it only has a previous. So that should fix the errors that we're seeing. We don't need that. Okay, and now let's go into, so we got everything saved. Let's go into contact info, prev submit, password info. Let's call the function with the password. Okay. Basic, so everything should be, let's refresh. I think everything should be back. Okay. And Saunders, next, password, next, contact, submit. Okay, so we've separated everything out of the components. Let's go back to our home page. See how nice and clean it is. Everything's been separated. Error handling and all the information around the form fields are being managed appropriately by Reactor Form, which is exactly what we wanted. I think there's just like a few more little things that we want to do. What we want to do is we want to show, so for example, let's go back. Like we need to confirm, because if you look at these passwords, they don't match. So right now, all we're doing is confirming that the field's required, but let's confirm that it actually matches, which is just a slight change in how we can manage validation inside of Reactor Form. So let's find this password info. Actually, let's do, before we change the validation, let's try to utilize this this error. Where did it go? This error message hook that we were talking about early on. So we're going to clean up this errors, and we're going to use the error message. I think I imported it back here. I imported it, commented out. Yeah, we're going to use this guy. So we don't need it in our home because we've moved all of the logic out. So actually, I think that means I can get rid of register here. What am I doing? We need triggers. What are we doing? Why would we need errors? Let's delete. If I delete this errors, do I still need it? Oops, I don't need that. So I think we're good now. All right. So let's clean up how we're displaying our error message. So if I go, let's start with the basic info first. Right, so this is kind of messy, especially since we're given a tool to manage this. And it is called this, what did I do with it? Let's see. There you go. And so really with ErrorMessage, all you do is just give it a name and it will go figure out what is the appropriate component and ErrorMessage that should be dumped. So we have ErrorMessage, and so now let's go down here. So this is for first name. So if I just drop this here, I say errors, and then I say name equals first. And then what I can do here is on my register, I could specify the actual error message I want. So I can say required first name is required. Let's just copy this, go down here, change this to last. Last name is required. Let's copy my error message. Place this, say last. Okay, now if I go back to my form, and I'm getting the specific error message that I wanted, it's kind of rendered there for me nice and neatly. So that's that. So that's our first name. And now we go to the next one. But like I said, the password confirmation is just giving us our basic field is required. Let's make the initial change that we made here. Let's start first with getting this error message over there. And so that's here in password. We import the error message. Let's do similar to what we did with the basic message. Let's copy over the basic message on our password information. Where'd it go? Yeah. Let's bring another ion item over, so let's get that out of there. This is password. And what we want to say is password is required. Okay. And then error message. But down in the second one, there's two things. Whatever this password is, it needs to match this password. And first of all, this is password 1. So let's copy our error message. And let's go down here. And this is password 2. And what we need another way to validate this. And Reactor Form provides another way for you to validate it. And off of register, you can, inside of register here, you can do validate. And then inside of validate, you can set the conditions. And so what we want to do, and then what validate does is it actually gives you, so that's the value that this current form field has. All right. Okay, why is it still bugging? Validate, no match. Think. Okay. So we need to put the validation that we wanted here, and the validation that we wanted here is the first thing is we need to get the value of password 1. So to get the values in Reactor Form, there's a method called getValues. And so what we could do is inside of here, we can say get values password 1. So that will give us password 1. And what we could do is this is our current value. So if my value does not equal password 1, then the string that we want returned is passwords do not match. Otherwise, just return undefined, return nothing. Undefined, and let's return this. And it will undefined, if I return undefined, it will assume that it is valid. Passwords. So let me look at my code again. So I need that out. Let's see. Try again. AARON. That's a UNDRS. Next. So passwords do not match. And if I remove that, then we get that password's required. So now let's type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 P's. Right? And then now 1, 2, 3 P's. Next. Passwords do not match. 5 P's. Passwords match. and now we get what we want. So, covered a lot here, but hopefully you found this helpful. So we showed how to, first of all, create a form wizard step by step, keep track of the state of the fields that are entered. We showed how to validate them using Reactor Form. We showed how to use Ionic Slides. We showed how to get access to the slide object to perform specific actions on it. We showed how to use FormProvider and FormContext to kind of clean up our UI. So as you can see, our slides, our home page here is a lot easier to read. We demonstrated this. Let's clean this up. I missed this last part. And we demonstrated how to use the error component. So let's get that. We demonstrated how to use the error component from hook form. And we did all this in Ionic Framework. So hopefully you guys found this enjoyable. Let me get this last edit in. It's contact information, error message, copy here. Copy this error message. Let's go to contact. Let's change that. Change that. This is phone number is required. Let's change this to phone. And this last one, email is required. I'm going to change this to email. Okay, let's save this. No thanks. Let's just quickly get to the next part here. Next. These have to match, so 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Next. Submit. Phone number is required, so we're getting our custom error message, which is what we wanted. Email is required, so that we're getting that. Did I use the password name? Passwords 1, 2, password 2, email SpongeBob. All right, so it looks like everything now is working the way we wanted it to. Make sure my names are right. Let's refresh this and just do one more test just to make sure. And actually, there's another trick that I found that kind of addressed this issue with all the stuff popping on top. There's a way on the form to basically say ignore autofill. So let's try that and see if that kind of cleans all this stuff. It's autocomplete. So actually, it's two things. Let's go up to the top of our form. Where's my form? And let's turn autocomplete off. And then the other thing is what we want on our password fields. We don't want it to be bringing in old passwords. So let's. There's a hack. I don't know if you call it a hack, but there's a way to basically say new passwords only. So let me find that exact code that is used. It's this little line. Autocomplete new password. Autocomplete new password. Okay. Let's refresh all of this. See, so now we don't have that weird name thing popping up. But refresh. Save. Let me try one more time. I think we can do the exact same thing on my contact info. Where did it go? Basic info. And so now, now we don't have the password thing hovering. 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Next. And then everything's saved. So once again, hopefully you found this video helpful. Reactor Form's an awesome tool. Source code will be provided. You could expand upon this to make your wizards much more complex, do some more interesting things. But hopefully you enjoyed this, and I will see you next time. Thanks. Bye.